Hello, this is Troy Eckard. I'm the CEO and manager of Eckard Land and Acquisition out of Dallas, Texas. And what I'd like to do is introduce you to some of the simple processes that can be undertaken with regard to locating and identifying productive and valuable minerals. Now, every mineral company has their own selective process. They have their own financial parameters. They offer various degrees of ways and methodologies to approach buying minerals. It goes everything from what state you're going to be in, what basin you're going to search, whether you want minerals that are what we call leading edge minerals, meaning ahead of the drilling rig, not yet productive, or whether they're directly underneath existing producing wells, which we call vintage production. So everything in between are basically up to the individual oil and gas company or the mineral investment company as to what type of minerals they want to invest in or acquire. Here at Eckard Land and Acquisition, we are a company that has a very specific and very unique way that we go about buying our minerals, and we also believe we have our own set financial parameters. So what I would like to do is take about 5 minutes and show you some of the ways in which we approach buying oil and gas minerals. I've got some maps on my desk, and I'm going to walk you through a sequence of maps that just shows you what we do and why we do it. The first thing is we're looking at an entire area that includes the Arkola Basin. It also includes the Anadarko Basin. Now, let's face it, the fact of the matter is that there is probably 47 known productive commercial formations in the state of Oklahoma. Each one of these basins and each one of these areas of concentration of hydrocarbons is based on geological and geophysical events. The one thing that's clear is because of the evolution of the shale formation being such a commercially viable reservoir, it's allowed a very broad focus on a very broad area of hydrocarbon accumulations, which means the basin's big. It's long, 500 miles long, north to south probably a couple hundred miles east to west. And so what it does is it gives you a pretty big playground or sandbox to play in. The question is, how do you play? Where do you play? What drives you to go to certain areas within that big sandbox? And that's where the expertise, the individual economic parameters, and of course just mainly the gut instinct from the person that's actually guiding the ship and saying, here's where I want to be, the types of minerals I want to own, what I'm willing to pay for it, etc. So let's go through it. So the first thing is, just from a simple point of view, we've got to look at the fact this is a very deep basin. This is the Anadarko Basin. So as we go from west to east, what we find is that we come up out of a deep trench, and we come up very shallow. Keep in mind that when you're dealing with oil and gas, the deeper it is, the more compact it is, which means there's bigger reserves, more molecules compressed into space. It also means it's a lot more expensive to drill. So although you might find the deep end of the swimming pool is quite attractive, you may find that oil companies are not quite willing to spend the money necessary to develop those deeper reservoirs. So it's a balance between economic cost, reserves, and somewhere in there is a balance of financial economics and consideration based on timing and execution. So we're dealing with a very deep, loaded basin full of hydrocarbons. Now what are we dealing with next? Well, we're dealing with a reservoir compaction, means multiple pay zones and multiple layers. So as you can see, when you talk about horizontal displacement, you're looking to try to access all those reserves by putting in known pipes and conduits that allow you to extract those oil and gas molecules. So we have a deep part of the basin, we have a shallow part of the basin, we have multiple stacked reservoirs going from 1,500 feet down to 20,000 feet deep. This is a very unique underground subway system or underground construction site that is being accessed by latest, greatest state-of-the-art technology. We understand that and we get that because we've been drilling wells since 1985. The first horizontal well that I participated in was in 1989, so this is not like something was created last week. I actually was participating and investing with my own money in horizontal wells in the late 1980s. All that's happened is the technology today has just made it that much better, more advanced, and more accurate. Now, when I look at it from a type log and I talk about the different reservoirs that are stacked, we start trying to tie reservoir or reserve quantities to each one of those zones, and that has to do with the economics. Do I want to drill slightly deeper, knowing the zone may be thicker and maybe it has more liquids, which liquids may be a better value than, let's say, dry gas? But what happens is we know going down from the shallowest formations to the deepest formation that these reservoirs exist, and they exist in certain areas, sometimes 5 or 6, sometimes 2 or 3. It all has to do with your knowledge, your expertise, and your understanding of this entire area within the Anadarko and Arkola Basin. That again is why Eckard Land and Acquisition believes we have the expertise, is we studied and we reviewed and we understand what we want and where we're willing to go invest our money. Now, when you take a look at the old well logs and the old well information where the locations are, it literally looks like a pincushion. I mean, Oklahoma's been productive with oil and gas for well over 100 years. This is not like it's a brand new heyday and we just discovered that Oklahoma has oil and gas. It's the fourth largest producing state in the union. It has been around for a long time. And all these vertical wells have literally been like periscopes, like a submarine. They've gone down the ground, they've looked around. We know thicknesses, times, depth, we know reservoir content. And so all this old information has really been very helpful for us to decide where do we want to buy minerals. One might think, well, I don't want to buy minerals in an area that's been heavily drilled because the reservoir has been depleted. But in fact, that may be one shallow zone, has nothing to do with the deeper shale zones that were now being horizontally drilled and produced. So understanding zones, content, methodology, horizontal versus vertical, knowing which formations can be exploited with this new frac technique, that's all part of the secret sauce, is you have to know what's below the ground and how to access it. Whenever you take a look at our particular holdings, it says Eckard Overview, we have kind of a trend within the heart of the Arkola Basin. And within that trend, we have specific areas of interest that we like to concentrate on. And I'll just give you an example. We start off with a very simple township and range map. And the way the map works is that we, within a trend line, will identify different hotspots. Now, what's a hotspot? A hotspot to us is historical, proven, or relevant production information from newly developed wells using horizontal drilling and, of course, frac applications. When we determine a hotspot, it's because we see really good production numbers, we see really good success with the latest technology, and that tells us we need to focus on this particular area because it does offer us the chance to increase our rate of return and allows us to go in and start securing minerals before the field develops. It's not that necessarily this is the only spot. You have to have very focused areas of interest. This is a huge playground. We're talking 10 million acres of minerals to choose from. It'd be like being lost in the rainforest. You don't know which way to go. So we have to use every tool we can to completely refine and get us to a funnel view of areas that we believe are in fact hotspots or maybe possibly a hotspot needing further due diligence and further review. So when I start looking at minerals, I start with a blank sheet of paper. I take no assumptions. I don't know which one of these townships, each one of these townships on this map, I don't know which one's going to be the best. What I know is I've got to take 35 years of expertise and I've got to take all the aggregated intellectual value that I have accumulated over those 3.5 decades and try to make a determination. It's the where, it's the who, it's the why, it's the quantity, it's the depth, it's the cost of exploration. Now, I know some of you are not really mineral or oil and gas experts, so let me put that in simple terms. I need to know why a particular oil company is drilling in a given area. I want to know what they're drilling for. I'd like to know what it costs them to drill the well because I need to understand their economics. I need to know what it takes for that company to break even. I don't want to buy minerals on an oil company who's drilling a well that it looks like they're not going to even make the return on their capital from drilling. I need them to be successful. I need them to find a lot of reserves, so they'll drill this second, third, fourth, fifth well on my minerals as they continually reap profits. So there's a lot that goes into oil and gas minerals. Again, that's why you, possibly as a mineral investor or a mineral owner out there, will say, how do I gather all that information and try to replicate what maybe a company like Eckard Land and Acquisition does? The question is, you might have to spend 35 years to gather that knowledge because, quite frankly, that's what I've done. I've spent my entire career focused on oil and gas. Now, when we finally get down to the specific areas, the townships that we like, we can then sort those particular assets and opportunities based on horizontal drilling, vertical drilling. We can pull up well information, well by well. If you just take a look at two different maps, we can do it in stages. We can take a macro view and a micro view. We can actually get down to the individual wellbore and through electronic data, through the public access of data that's available through subscriptions or the Oklahoma Commission or any public gathering of data, we can start putting those pieces of the puzzle together so that way when we do find an area that we're interested in, we can essentially do a great deal of due diligence on who owns the minerals, where the minerals are located, which oil companies have drilled, what leases have been taken. We can also determine what zone they're in, what reservoir, how big of a frac stimulation did they put? Was this a larger frac stimulation so the well's much bigger? Did they put in a smaller frac stimulation so it looks like it's not as good a well, but in fact it's actually because they were limited in the size of frac sand amount or quantity they put into the wellbore? There is layers and layers of information, no different than a medical doctor takes a look at all the symptoms and comes up with a conclusive answer as to what is ailing you. In our case, we take a look at all the collective pieces of information and we keep narrowing our focus until we say, bullseye. I want to be in this township, in these sections of land, under this operator's wells, and I want to pay this price based on the estimated reserves and the value of those reserves and the quantity of wells that it takes to drill or extract the reserves in the ground. It's about just gathering information that the average investor, the average mineral buyer will never have. And it's not to say you couldn't go spend a lot of money and hire the right team to do it, but there is a choice in life. You either do what you really do well and you focus on that, and you pay people to bring you the expertise for things that you would like to be in but you don't have the time or the resources or really the interest to do it. When I go see some of the vendors that I use, I look at them and I think to myself, I could do so much better job. I could run that restaurant better. I could do so much better at this particular sector. And then I think, but I don't want to. I don't want to do it because I don't want to learn what they've had to do for 25 years, even though I might do it better. What I really want to do is I want to understand the intricacies. So one of the things that our company does is we work on projects like what we called our Marshall 101. This was a project in which we were looking at minerals that possibly were for sale and wanted to be leased or developed. And we spent several months going through and we just put layer upon layer trying to understand the entire macro area and what these minerals look like. So proprietary data and proprietary information that we worked on literally took us step by step through every single one of the particular opportunities within this project. And what it really boiled down for us is trying to say, why? Why do we want to be here? Do we want to be here? And if we do want to be here, what is our financial incentive or motive? And that is important for you as an investor, is to know there is somebody watching every day the focus on the minerals that Eckard Land and Acquisition is going to buy, acquire, and possibly we might invite outside partners to possibly invest with us. This is Troy Eckard with Eckard Land and Acquisition. I wanted you to know there is a lot that goes into mineral selection, that we are in fact working on this 24 hours a day, seemingly, and that this all comes as a complete complement to a commitment to a career for 35 years. It is the pinnacle of my career to be able to take that data and put it together to find true value in mineral ownership in Oklahoma. Thank you for your time, and again, I appreciate your taking a look at the video.